when you look at all the Naruto villains throughout part one and part two, you you see that most of the villains are very connected through one another through like a chain, and each villain is like was a puppet for one, basically for another one, and it all started. Let's go do it from in the time aspect. So it started with basically the chakra tree. It started with the chakra tree, or AKA the Jubi, who was who eventually was manipulating Kagura or influenced Kaguya by her eating the chakra tree, and she became obsessed with the power because like the curse of the chakra, something like that. And then it went from Kaguya to Black Zetsu, who was actually the will of Kaguya, and he basically became a multi-century long stalker. And then it went from Black Zetsu to Madara. Yeah, Black Zetsu to Madara, and Madara to Obito, and Obito to Nagato, and Nagato, if you want to count the puppets, Pain, because that's basically who Pain was. He was the puppets, and Nagato was controlling the dead bodies. Pain was the ones doing all the work, and Nagato was the one behind the scenes. So if you want to count Pain as a puppet, yeah, puppet of Nagato, because he really technically was a puppet. Pain, even though it was a dead body, even though it was Nagato, but he was controlling them. So Nagato to Pain, and that's everything down the line. Yeah, it was down to Nagato, and that's like the major villains that had to be taken out because uh, it's basically all dealing with the Kaksi. So the reason why I said this video is called the reason why I call this video Obito was not a horrible villain because is I'm gonna talk about how Obito technically is a villain and isn't a villain because he was a puppet. And like I said, I just gave you a string like a puppets, but the thing about Obito, he was more so a puppet to anyone else. Not only because he was completely manipulated and controlled through his emotions by Madara, but also his ideals, everything that he was striving for, his motives, his ambitions as a villain was of Madara's. Other than that, the only thing that was driving him was Rain, which was a 14-year-old girl who died a long time ago, and he just wanted to have an imaginary version of her in a dream. That's not a good motive. So screw that. That's not how you gonna have that as a motive as a villain. So other than that, basically all his villainous motives and ambitions was of Madara, from Madara, and that's one thing. So the thing is, I'm gonna categorize Obito not as a horrible villain, and not as a puppet, but a horrible puppet, a very horrible puppet. Because see, Obito at first was like Naruto, and he also had the late factor with that Kakashi inherited. So he started off a little crybaby, kind of like Naruto when he became Okage, had the same personality, outgoing, didn't get on Kakashi. He always late. Kakashi always belittled him because his immaturity as a ninja and his lack of discipline. And eventually they went to the war. Rin got captured, and they got him and Kakashi got in an argument. Obito tried to save Rin. He sucked. And then Kashi came, got his eyes slit. Obito started crying again, but eventually Obito got a little bit confidence and with his Sharingan, they were to save Rin, but Kakashi ended up dying. Well, not Kakashi almost ended up getting crushed by the rock, which Obito saved Kakashi's life, and Obito gets crushed by the rock, and we all think he's dead, but he actually wasn't because he partially awakened his calming abilities, woke up in Madara's cave, and that's how that started from there. Now, Obito had no interest in Madara's ideas. He was like, I'm not interested in your ideas, which is weird because Madara was like, it's Madara Uchiha, and he's like, I'm planning to take over the world. I was like, okay, whatever. I don't get that. That was weird. I know it was weird. Weird character. Bad writing. But when he left after White Zetsu came up and was like, oh, Rin and Kashi's in trouble. He left with the White Zetsu cloak, White Zetsu wrap around him, and then when he got there, he just flips out because the whole game, the curse of the Uchiha, when their emotions rises up, it turns into chakra, and they like Sharingan. They like, no, my brother, Sharingan. Basically, that's what happens. And he went crazy with the whole wood style jutsu in the Kamami, and made all the trees, blood dripping, pool blood, all that stuff. And then when he goes over there, he steps over Kakashi's body like he ignores him, and then he went to the ring and says, "This is hell." It goes back, and then when Madara starts explaining to him his ideals and stuff like that, who was basically like, "I don't care about Kakashi," which makes no sense since Kakashi is the reason why that happened. But then besides that, Obito listened to Madara. He took on all his ideals, and he was like, "I believe everything you say." And Madara was like, "Yep, the plan worked." And he's like, "I'm leaving it to you because I just tricked you." And he basically, like Madara said, anybody, he was like, Obito asked Madara, who am I to you? And Madara said, "You are Madara. Anybody who with the same ideals as me is Madara." That's basically what Madara said. So Obito wasn't really Obito. He was just freaking another extension of Madara. He wasn't even a puppet. It was, I don't know what he called that. Like, Madara just like, it was almost if Madara took a part of, you know how they say, like, we can create all these, we have all these talents and gifts and like knowledge we gain through life, but when we die, all that's lost, and that's why we like to write things down or record it somehow so it can be passed on to each generation, or passed on through words, so it can be passed down through the memories of people. That's basically what Madara did. He just basically instilled all his ideas and knowledge and adventures into a person, a vessel, which was Obito, and then died and came back and let and after Obito did everything for him, well, basically Obito was basically the embodiment of all of Madara's ideals. That's why Madara said Obito was Madara. And then when Obito did everything he needed to do for Madara, Madara came back. It was like, I'm took over this shit, and he did eventually. Even though Obito try to reverse it, that didn't work out. But so basically, in all things, Obito is not a horrible villain because he's not a villain at all. He's a horrible puppet. And the reason why it's a horrible puppet because a puppet is someone that's, I don't know if that is that definition, but it's someone that's basically being controlled by a mastermind with strings, and they manipulate the whole situation from the outside in. You know, manipulation. That's being manipulated. But Madara manipulated Obito, but he did more than manipulate Obito as a puppet. He basically turned Obito into another Madara. That's worse than being a puppet. So Obito was just sad. He can't categorize him as a villain. A lot of people said Obito was a horrible villain. He's not a villain. He's a bad puppet. He's a puppet. So now let's talk about Obito. Let's talk about the other puppets. So we have Nagato, who was eventually became the puppet of Obito, in which Obito did the same thing to Madara. And then we go back to when Obito tried to get Naruto's Rinnegan after Naruto died using his Renetese Jutsu. He killed Konan and said that Naruto was pathetic because he was just like a whiny little child, something like that. Which is very ironic since Obito is even worse than Nagato. Since Obito is an emotional wreck himself, and his idea is not even his own. He's just another basically Madara clone in a sense that was used by the real Madara. And the only thing that was of Obito of himself was Rin, which is not good enough at all. It's not even close. So that's one thing. And another thing about Nagato, Nagato really wasn't even down with the Infinite Tsukuyomi. Even he had his own plans. He wasn't a full puppet. He wanted control the world through pain, by making basically nuclear bombs out of the Ten Tails with powerful jutsu, and then create temporary peace. That was Nagato's own goal. That had nothing to do with Obito's dream world thing. So Nagato have more better ambitious goals as a villain, or not even a villain, as an individual than Obito's. In which Obito's ambition wasn't even his own, other besides Rain. So that's Nagato. Then we go to past Obito, who was controlled by Madara. Madara was also a puppet, which is kind of messed up. That how Madara thought that Black Zetsu was his will, but it was actually the will of Kaguya, Kaguya's will. So the whole time, Black Zetsu was just stalking people, stalking the ninja world, is watching for shadows. Like, I'm recording everything. And he took over Madara's body and turned to Kaguya. Now Kaguya, even Kaguya is a puppet. And Black Zetsu, I guess you can call Black Zetsu a puppet of Kaguya, but he was basically he was being used by Kaguya, but he was part of Kaguya. He was Kaguya's will, so he wasn't really that much a puppet. But going to Kaguya, Kaguya wasn't really like the way she was before she ate of the chocolate tree, in which the chocolate tree, or AKA the Jubi, has own thoughts and his own mindset, his consciousness. And once she ate of the chocolate fruit, she started to go crazy. And we still don't totally know why she went crazy. Not the full details, but you can say that she was being controlled, and this we don't even know that much of her motives. And like the whole thing about what happens with the humans, it's not as in depth as what Madara went through, or what even Nagato went through, and it's just kind of like repetitive. And even though I understand that it's the whole cycle of hatred, but it's kind of sucks because it's same thing over and over again. Like considering someone like Kaguya, a goddess like figure, should her motives and her backstory of why she went crazy should be much more interesting, intriguing, other than the same thing that we see over and over again with the cycle of hatred of Nagato, and Madara, and even Sasuke. Oh yeah, Sasuke. Put a little star next to him that I'm gonna talk about him a little bit too. So Sasuke, no, not Sasuke, but so continue on. And yeah, Kaguya was in a way manipulated by the chakra sheet, and we don't know where the chakra sheet necessarily comes from yet, or we probably will never know. But until that day comes, that's the string of puppets, and that's why I say Obito is the worst of all, the worst puppet, because each and every puppet, even though they were being manipulated and controlled, they still had their own ideals and ambitions as a villain, enough to be called a villain, even though they might have been a horrible